Welcome everybody, and thank you for listening to the Better Bushcraft Podcast. My name is Tommy Clark, your host, and this is episode 2, 8 Simple Fire Starters. And in today's episode, I thought I would cover a topic that everybody could relate to, either if you're just a bushcrafter that has been doing it for a while, or if you're just getting into bushcraft and you wanted to get some good ideas of some equipment that you can add to your pack that costs virtually no money. That's why I decided to do this podcast. So this one is going to be all about different fire starters that I have used in the past and that they have worked really well for me. And all of these, I think all of them but one, you can make at home yourself. So, and even the last one, you can go out and find yourself out in the woods if you know where to look. So, but before we get into the main topic, I thought I would go ahead and cover some of the new topics and articles and videos that I have added to the betterbushcraft.com website. And one of those is the latest one that I have done, talking about the Moore Clipper knife. It's a review video and modifications that I've done to the Moore Clipper. If you guys are... If you know about the Moore line, they're a great knife. Some people don't really appreciate them as well as they should, but it's a great knife. And so I went ahead and put a review video about the Moore, as well as some modifications that I've done to the knife and the sheath as well. Another video that I just posted up was about another knife that I carry with me, and it's my EDC knife. It's a great little knife from K-Bar, which is a dozer design knife. If you haven't heard of this knife before, I would suggest you check it out. It's a great knife to carry, with you everywhere you go, as well as in the bush. It's a great little knife. A couple other things that I just added. I've been really busy on adding videos and articles. So another one that I just added is it's a video about building a bushcraft scout pouch. That's what I call it. It's just basically a small little pouch that I keep on my belt with me when I'm going away from camp, and I don't really want to bring my backpack with me, but I want to keep some essential items on hand just in case. So I built this small little pouch, and it's a great little video if you want some ideas of how to carry some equipment with you and not always having to keep it in your pocket. So I think that's all I'll cover for now. I added a few more videos on there within the last week that you should go ahead and check out, as well as some articles such as building a compact bushcrafting fishing kit, if you want to know how to build a fishing kit, as well as a video about harvesting different edibles for tea, and some reviews on some fire steels. But let's go ahead and jump into today's main topic, which is building or making 8 simple fire starters, or at least bringing them with you. And when it comes to fire starters, to me, you can't really have too many. This is one of the things that I'm very redundant on bringing, is different types of fire starters, simply because it's one of the most important things that you need to have. Because if you can't start a fire, you can't do a lot of things. You need a fire, obviously for warmth, shelter, water purification, for cooking your food, and for many other reasons. So for that being one of the main things that you need to do is building a fire, you should really have a great way to start that fire. And, we're not talking about the different ignition sources. That'll be in another podcast, such as, your fire steels, your matches, your lighters, or using, the sun, or, many different ways to actually start the fire. But I'm talking about different tinders, really. Different fire tinders that you can use that will get that flame going long enough to start some other little twigs and stuff on fire to make your campfire. So, you can always find a natural tinder to, use as your tinder. You can take some bark and stuff like that. But I'm talking about 8 simple things that you can take in your pack that take virtually no room, and they're pretty much free to make, or next to nothing. It costs pennies to make these, and you'll know that you have a good source of fire tinder. So that's why I always carry them with me. So one of the first ones that we're going to be talking about is something that you should have around your house somewhere, probably in your medicine cabinet, or if you're married or you have a girlfriend, she has them, a whole bunch of them, and they're really cheap. And what I'm talking about is cotton balls. Cotton balls are great fire starters. Very, very cheap. I mean, you can buy a bag of 100 for, I think, $1 or less. and you can pack a whole bunch of them in a very small space, and you could divide them if needed. So you could grab like a handful of cotton balls, squeeze them down into a tiny little space, and you have enough fire starters for many fires. The thing about cotton balls, like I said, is they're very cheap. The good way to start them on fire is to fluff them up a little bit in your hands, and you can strike a fire still against them. Or obviously you can use a lighter or a match, or many different things to get that going. The plus side about cotton balls is, of course, that they're very cheap, they're very handy, very inexpensive. Downside about only using the cotton ball, dry the way it is it goes up in flame really quickly. So you got to be ready with your other types of twigs and stuff to make sure that you get that fire going and sustained. So that is number one. Now, I have a couple of adaptations to this, and that is using the cotton ball with petroleum jelly. Now, this is my number one favorite fire starter, and the reason is because it burns a lot longer than the cotton ball alone. And, I've tested it out. I've lit many cotton balls with petroleum jelly on them, and they burn for, anywhere between a minute to 2 minutes, which is really great because, if you can't get a fire going in a minute to 2 minutes, get your other twigs burning, you need to look and see what you're doing wrong, because that's plenty amount of time to go ahead and get your fire going. You can make a whole bunch of these at a time. You can put a big handful of cotton balls in a little Ziploc baggie and add a couple of tablespoons or whatever of the petroleum jelly, lock the bag up, squish them around, and they're ready to go. You can just leave them in that Ziploc baggie. And another plus about these cotton balls with petroleum jelly is that they are semi-waterproof. So if some moisture gets into them, you don't really have to worry about it too much, because the petroleum jelly kind of protects the fibers, and you can indeed light the cotton ball even if there's moisture on there. So that's one of the reasons why this is my favorite type of fire tinder. But let's go ahead and move on and talk about some of the other ones. Another cotton ball adaptation that I've learned is the cotton ball with candle wax. And this is really good to use because you can find some old candles, around my house. There's tons of old candles that my wife has, bought in the past, and we burn them down till they're basically unusable. And all that you would have to do is take that wax and melt it down, and then dip a whole bunch of cotton balls into it and let them dry out. Now, these are fun because they get really hard, so they're almost guaranteed to be waterproof. Now, you got to be sure not to dip the whole cotton ball in there and get it completely soaked with wax. It can still light, but then it's really hard to get the fibers out to get a good spark to catch on there. So what I usually do is dip half of the cotton ball in there and then pull it out. And then that way you have half of cotton ball that's wax, and the other half almost acts like a wick. And once you strike that, the wax will melt down as it's burning. And these burn for a long time too. I think about 3 minutes or so. So that is another cotton ball adaptation to use. So let's move on to something else besides cotton balls, but kind of in the same category. And this is something that is guaranteed to be free, and I know you have it around your house because every house does. And that is dryer lint. Dryer lint is extremely flammable. It's very cheap. You always have it on hand. You could always empty out the dryer, and instead of throwing the dryer lint away, get another bucket or a little, probably a bucket or a sack, and just keep the dryer lint in there. Next time you go out bushcrafting, just grab a big handful of that, throw it in a Ziploc bag, and take it with you, and you're ready to start some fires. Now, dryer lint goes up pretty quickly, but it catches a spark really great, and it's free. So if you always check the dryer before you head out to bushcraft, you always know you have at least some tinder that's gonna get you a fire going. So that was number 4, I believe. Let's move on to something a little bit different, and this one that I have learned is pretty cool too. I think I saw this one on a YouTube video, and I never thought about it before, but it makes sense, and that is using jute twine with wax. Now, jute twine is one of those things that you would find at a hardware store, or if you go to your local department store. You'll find it in the hardware section, and it's just a roll of jute twine, which is almost like a very coarse type of cordage. And if you burn your candles down or melt your candles down, like I said before, with a cotton ball, and you get some jute twine, you kind of bundle it up and kind of rub the melted wax on it, let it dry. It's really great to catch a spark. When you are ready to use it, though, what you should do is, cut off a little piece, kind of fray the fibers a little bit, so you can get a spark on there. But those burn for a long time, and it's really cheap. And the great thing about using jute twine is, you don't have to only use it for fire tinder. Let's say you're running out of cordage to make some a shelter or what have you. You can always use it for that. So it's a multi-purpose piece of kit. So that's another reason why it's so great. Now let's move on to something that you're going to have to actually build or make, rather, and that is char cloth. Now, char cloth is something that you've probably seen on those survival shows like Dual Survival or some of those other ones. But it is another great piece of equipment to carry with you at all times. And the great thing about char cloth is that it catches a spark really great, and it's really easy to make. So what you would do is the next time you have your campfire going out in the bush, or even in your backyard or whatever you're using, you find a nice small tin that has a metal bottom and a metal top, and what you would do is poke a hole in the top of the tin so that a little bit of air could pass through that. And what you would do is cut up some old t-shirts or some other types of cotton material and cut little squares of it, probably about 2 inch by 2 inch or so, and throw those in there. And then you'd put this tin with the lid on top of your fire when the coals are kind of just burning, and let it smoke out. Now what you would notice is that smoke will start to escape out of that hole, but the cotton is not allowed to combust or catch on fire because it's in a enclosed space. So you would watch the tin and watch the smoke until it stops smoking, and then after a few more minutes you'd pull it off the fire and let it cool. And what you should see inside is a nice piece of black cloth, and they'll all be black. So I usually start with white cotton so I know that it's done, but you could use whatever. But once it's nice and black and it's almost ashy at sometimes, and what you would do is test a little piece to make sure it works. So take a little piece out, strike your fire steel, and try to catch a spark on that piece of char cloth. And if you notice it starts to smolder a little bit, you made it really well, and the rest is ready to go. So I always keep that in my pack as well, because it is a great thing to catch a spark on, and you can start a nice fire using the char cloth. So let's move on. Hopefully I'm not giving you guys too many ideas right now. I mean, if you can only remember a few, that's okay, because these are all pretty much really great. So anyways, let's move on to one that I've learned how to do by my father-in-law, and he actually used these to start his fireplace in his house, but I realize that it's great to just start a fire in general. So, and what you will need for this is an egg carton. Those egg cartons that are more of the biodegradable ones, not the plastic or the styrofoam ones, but I'm talking about the ones that have like the natural fibers in them. So you'll need an egg carton, and then what you're also going to need is some of that dryer lint that you've been saving from your dryer. Just keep it in the bag, and what you'll do is stuff each one of those egg carton compartments pretty full of that dryer lint, kind of like smush it down so it's about 3/4 of the way full. And then what you're going to need is, sometimes I put shredded newspaper in this. You don't have to do this, but I do it sometimes just to be able to catch a spark a little bit better. But you can throw some shredded newspaper in the mix, and then you'll top it all off with some melted candle wax. You'll top the whole top with the wax, and what the wax will do is seep down through the dryer lint and the newspaper and kind of get it all nice into a hardened ball. And then the next time you go out bushcrafting, just rip off a couple of those egg carton sections and then take it with you, and then you got to fluff it up a little bit, the edge, with the dryer lint, and you strike it with your fire steel or whatever you're using, maybe a lighter, it doesn't really matter. It catches it all really well. And these egg carton things are awesome. Now they will burn. actually tested these out, and they burn for at least 10 minutes, and that's plenty of time to get any type of tinder going. And I usually save these until it's kind of damp outside. I can't really find that great of dry firewood to get going or dry tinder to get going. I use this, and these also work really great in the wind because for some reason they don't blow out very well, so you can get a good fire going using one of these in windy, wet conditions. So I usually save them, but they're really cheap to make, so sometimes I just use them just because they're cool. But so that is one of the best ones to go ahead and make if you've never done it before. Try it. You have all this stuff for free anyways. It's just an egg carton that you'd save, some dryer lint that you'd save, one of those newspapers you save, and then also the candle wax. So it's all free, but it makes an awesome fire tinder that goes for at least 10 minutes. So that is probably the most bomb-proof of them all, but go ahead and try to test that one out. Now, the last one that I have on here, and I don't know if I made 7 or 8. I apologize if it's not 8, but here's the last one I have on my list anyways. It's Fatwood. Now, Fatwood, you can either harvest yourself or buy it online. I bought several different pieces online, and they are amazing. Now, the best place that I've found to find Fatwood online is firesteel.com. And I think they sell them for like $5 or so, or maybe less than that, but it's very, very helpful. And they sell really good quality Fatwood that's very saturated with the sap, and it catches a spark really well. But if you don't know what Fatwood is, it's basically what I find the best is the pine tree wood that has the resin or sap that is all concentrated in the area. If you go to a pine tree and you see a spot that's kind of like sticky and it just looks like it's saturated with this sappy stuff, and it's a great fire starter. And if you find it out in the woods, and if you find it in a dead tree is the best, because then you don't hurt the tree, but you can just cut off a piece of that really concentrated area and let it I wouldn't say let it dry, but try a little piece, cut it off, kind of make some shavings and try to catch a fire steel spark on that, and it should go up really well because it's so flammable. It's a great natural fire starter. And the great thing about this is you only need a few small shavings. It goes a long way. You can mix that with some drier sticks and get that Fatwood going and catch those other sticks on fire, and it really saves on how much you really need to use. Another great plus about it is it smells great. It smells like pine, and who doesn't like the smell of pine? And what I like to do when I'm bushcrafting, to spend some time just looking for the Fatwood. It's kind of fun trying to find the different pine trees and see if there's any spots that have this Fatwood sap growing in there, and it's really fun. So you can even sometimes find them in hardware stores, but they usually are a little bit lower quality and not as saturated, but you might get lucky sometimes. So the next time you're in your hardware store, go and look for some pine that has that Fatwood in it, and then try that and see if it works for you. So anyways, guys, that was 8 easy fire starters to work with. That might have been 7, I'm not sure. I apologize if it's 7 or 8, but 7, not 8. And if you haven't tried some of these, go ahead and give it a try. Like I said, they're all really easy to do. They're all pretty much free or next to free. And why not pack some of this stuff and know that you have a great fire tinder to start a fire with. So I carry most of these all the time. Sometimes I switch them in and out, but usually I carry all of these with me just because they're all really great. I like to test them out here and there, and they virtually take up no room. So let's see what else. Oh, if you carry the cotton balls or the dryer lint, you should really put them in a waterproof baggie, maybe a Ziploc or a tin, just to make sure that they don't get too much moisture on them, but you should be okay if you do that. So guys, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions or even some ideas for a future podcast, I'd really appreciate that if you send them to me at idea@betterbushcraft.com. That's idea@betterbushcraft.com, and I'll be sure to check those out and see what you guys have to say. And make some new podcasts with your ideas, or even put some of your questions or comments on the air, try to address it so everybody in this community can learn a little bit more. And also be sure to check out the website for new content. I'm putting new content at least every third day or so I'm putting up videos and articles, as well as these podcasts are going to be going up on that as well. And you can check that out at betterbushcraft.com. That's betterbushcraft.com. And be sure to add some of these tenders to your kits. It's very low cost, like I said. And until next time, you guys, thanks for looking. Be safe, and be sure to practice your skills and pass them along, because that's really what it's all about. So share the knowledge with someone, and let's grow this community together. So until next time, you guys take care.